Marcus Webb's mop hit the marble floor with the same rhythm it had for the past 4 years. Slow, deliberate, invisible. The 40th floor of Axiom Capital's Manhattan headquarters was empty at 9:47 p.m., except for the conference room at the end of the hall, where light still bled through frosted glass. He could hear voices inside, sharp and competitive, the kind that came from people who measured their worth in millions. He didn't mean to stop outside the door, but the mop bucket's wheel caught on something, and in the 3 seconds it took to free it, he heard a voice he recognized. "The problem with most people," Richard Vance said, his tone carrying that particular blend of amusement and contempt that came naturally to men worth $9 billion, "is they mistake complexity for intelligence. They see an equation and freeze. That's why they clean floors while we own buildings." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but his hands kept working. 4 years of this, 4 years of being wallpaper. "You think anyone could solve it?" another voice asked. Marcus recognized him too, Joel Chen, Vance's protégé, the 31-year-old who'd just made partner. "In 30 seconds, not a chance." Vance laughed, the sound echoing into the hallway. "Hell, I'll make it interesting. Anyone, literally anyone, solves this in 30 seconds, I'll resign. Walk away from Axiom. Let you all fight over the scraps." The room erupted in laughter. Marcus should have moved on, should have pushed his cart down the hall, finished the bathroom on the south side, clocked out at 11 like always. Instead, he found himself looking at the equations scrawled across the whiteboard, visible through the glass. A problem in game theory. Something about Nash, equilibria, and optimal defection strategies in repeated prisoners' dilemmas. His hand was on the door handle before his mind caught up. The room went silent when he walked in. 7 faces turned toward him, their expression shifting from surprise to confusion to something close to offense. Marcus was 53, black, wearing a grey uniform with maintenance stitched across the chest. His appearance in their world was a category error. "The hell?" someone muttered. Richard Vance stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, his silver hair perfect even at this hour. He wore a suit that cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Can we help you?" The question was polite in structure only. Marcus felt every eye on him. He should apologize, back out, disappear. But something about that equation, about the casual cruelty in Vance's voice, had cracked something open. "The answer's wrong," Marcus said quietly. The silence deepened. Someone laughed, quick and nervous. Joel Chen leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching. Vance's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Excuse me?" "Your solution." Marcus nodded toward the board. "You've set up the defection strategy assuming rational actors with perfect information. But in repeated games, reputation effects dominate. The optimal strategy isn't maximum defection, it's conditional cooperation with proportional punishment. The Nash equilibrium you're looking for is there." He pointed to a section of the equation. "You're off by a factor of 0.83. The room was so quiet, Marcus could hear the ventilation system, the distant hum of elevators. Vance stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to the board, marker poised. Marcus watched his eyes scan the equations, saw the moment comprehension clicked into place. Vance's hand moved across the board, adjusting, recalculating. 30 seconds, 45, a full minute. When he turned back, his face had gone completely blank. "Who the hell are you?" "Marcus Webb. I clean this floor." Before that. Marcus felt the weight of the question, all the answers it contained. All the years collapsed into this single moment. Before that doesn't matter, it does now. Vance set down the marker with deliberate care. "Joel, run the corrected calculation." Joel Chen pulled out his laptop, fingers flying. The seconds stretched. Marcus knew what was coming. He could feel it the same way he'd felt gravity returning after his world had collapsed 4 years ago. "Holy shit," Joel said softly. "He's right, exactly right. 0.83 on the nose." Someone let out a low whistle. Vance walked toward Marcus slowly, studying him the way you'd study a Renaissance painting in a warehouse. 30 seconds, Vance said. "Less than that. You saw it in what, 15? Marcus said nothing. "So here's my problem," Vance continued, his voice dropping to something more dangerous than anger. "I just promised to resign if anyone solved that, in front of witnesses, and you—" He gestured at Marcus, at his uniform, at everything he represented. "You just made me look like an idiot in my own firm." "I can leave," Marcus said. "Forget this happened. Too late for that." Vance's smile was sharp now, predatory. "Everyone in this room just watched a janitor, no offense, solve in seconds what took our quantitative analysis team 3 hours this afternoon. So now I have questions, and you're going to answer them." Marcus felt his carefully constructed invisibility dissolving. 4 years of silence, of anonymity, of safety, all of it cracking apart because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. "Where'd you get your doctorate?" Vance asked. The question landed like a punch. Marcus saw several heads snap up. "MIT, Marcus heard himself say. "Mathematics. Graduated 2008. And you're cleaning floors." "I'm cleaning floors. Why?" That was the question, wasn't it? The one Marcus had spent 4 years not answering, not even to himself. He looked at Vance, at this man who'd just joked about people who clean floors, and felt something inside him shift. "Because I made a mistake," Marcus said. "Because I trusted the wrong people. Because I built something that was supposed to help, and instead it destroyed. And because when everything fell apart, I learned that a doctorate doesn't mean shit if you're the black guy holding the bag when the fraud comes to light." The room had gone absolutely still. "What was the mistake?" Vance asked, his voice different now, genuinely curious. "I created an algorithm," Marcus said. "A trading model, high-frequency arbitrage. It was beautiful, elegant, efficient, profitable. My partners at Meridian took it, scaled it, used it to front-run pension funds. When the SEC came knocking, they showed them documents with my signature, my code, my projections, said I was the architect of the whole scheme, and technically, they weren't lying." "But you didn't know," Joel said, leaning forward. "I knew the math," Marcus said. "I didn't know the intent. Turns out that doesn't matter much when the money disappears." "You went to prison?" someone asked. "No. I took a deal, gave them everything I had, testimony, documentation, the algorithm itself. They went to prison. I walked away with nothing. No money, no reputation, no references, just a conviction that I'd built a weapon while thinking I was building a tool." Vance studied him for a long moment. "So you became invisible." "I became quiet." "That's not the same thing." Marcus shrugged. "Close enough." Vance walked back to the whiteboard, staring at the corrected equation. "You know what this represents?" he asked, not turning around. "A model for optimal strategy in competitive markets with incomplete information. We're pitching it to the Whitman Group tomorrow. $400 million acquisition. This equation is the backbone of the entire presentation." Vance turned. "If you hadn't corrected it, we would have walked into that room with a flawed model. They would have caught it, their quants are good, we would have lost the deal. And probably 3 other prospects once word got out that Axiom couldn't handle graduate-level game theory." "I didn't do it for you," Marcus said. "Why did you do it?" Marcus thought about it, about what had made him walk through that door. "Because you said people like me are too stupid to understand. And I'm tired of being invisible to people who think they're better because they've never had to rebuild from rubble." Vance laughed, and this time it sounded almost genuine. "Fair enough." He looked around the room. "Everyone out. This meeting's over. The others filed out slowly, casting confused glances at Marcus as they passed. Joel lingered at the door. "Richard." "Out, Joel." When they were alone, Vance pulled out a chair and sat, gesturing for Marcus to do the same. Marcus remained standing. "I made a promise," Vance said. "I don't break promises, even stupid ones made as jokes. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to come back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Not in that uniform. You're going to sit in that meeting with the Whitman Group. And you're going to help us close that deal. I'm a janitor. You're a mathematician who happens to push a mop. There's a difference." Vance stood. "After that, we'll talk about what comes next. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But tonight change something, whether you want it to or not." Marcus felt the weight of it, the impossibility of going backward. "Why?" "Because I'm tired too," Vance said quietly. "Tired of surrounding myself with people who only know how to calculate risk, not understand it. Tired of firms full of Ivy League graduates who can't see past their own spreadsheets." He paused. "And because that joke I made about people who clean floors? That was shitty. And I'd rather hire someone who calls me on my shit than another yes-man who laughs at it." He walked toward the door, then stopped. 9 a.m. Don't make me come find you." After he left, Marcus stood alone in the conference room, looking at the corrected equation on the board. His reflection stared back at him from the windows, a ghost of who he used to be, wearing the uniform of who he'd become. His phone buzzed. A text from his daughter, Maya, 15 years old. "Up too late on a school night. Love you, Dad. Hope work isn't too hard." Marcus looked at the message for a long time. Tomorrow morning, he could walk into this building as something other than invisible. Or he could walk away, protect the quiet life he'd built, keep his daughter safe from the questions and scrutiny that would come. But standing there, looking at that equation he'd corrected without thinking, Marcus realized something. Invisibility was its own kind of prison. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to risk being seen again. He picked up his mop, finished the floor, and clocked out at 11:02 p.m. In his locker, he found the one suit he'd kept from his old life, wrapped in plastic, untouched for 4 years. Tomorrow, at 9 a.m., he'd find out if he remembered how to wear it. Marcus arrived at Axiom Capital at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early. The suit felt foreign, a charcoal Armani he'd bought in 2011 when money meant something different. It still fit, but barely. The fabric pulled across his shoulders, a physical reminder of 4 years spent pushing industrial cleaning equipment. His tie felt like a noose. The lobby security guard, Carlos, who'd nodded at him 5 nights a week for years, did a double-take that would have been funny if Marcus's stomach wasn't twisting itself into knots. "Dr. Webb?" Carlos said, squinting. The title felt like borrowed clothes. "Just Marcus. You getting promoted or something? Something like that." The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt longer than usual. Marcus caught his reflection in the polished steel doors. A black man in his 50s, graying at the temples, looking like he was trying to convince himself he belonged. He'd spent years making himself invisible. Now he was about to walk into a room where everyone would see him. The conference room was already filling when he arrived. Joel Chen spotted him first, surprise flickering across his face before settling into something more neutral, professional. Others filed in, women and men in their 30s and 40s, the kind of people who'd learned to wear confidence like a second skin. "Marcus." Richard Vance appeared at his elbow. "Good, you're here. Coffee?" "I'm fine. You look terrified." "I am terrified." Vance smiled slightly. "That's better than most people in this room. They're too stupid to be scared." He steered Marcus toward the front. "The Whitman Group will be here in 10 minutes. Their CEO is Margaret Whitman, 62, ruthless, brilliant. She made her fortune in defense contracting, then pivoted to financial services. She doesn't suffer fools, and she can smell bullshit from 3 floors away. So why am I here? Because the bullshit we're about to present includes the equation you corrected, and if she pushes back, I need someone who understands it fundamentally, not just theoretically. Vance paused. Also because I made a promise about resigning, and this is me not doing that while technically keeping my word. That's not. It's exactly how it works. Welcome to High Finance. The Whitman Group arrived at precisely 9 a.m. Margaret Whitman and 3 others, all carrying leather portfolios and the kind of calm that comes from holding all the cards. Whitman was smaller than Marcus expected, maybe 5'3", with steel-grey hair and eyes that missed nothing. Vance made introductions. When he reached Marcus, he said simply, "Dr. Marcus Webb, quantitative analysis." Marcus felt everyone's attention shift. Whitman's handshake was firm, professional. "Dr. Webb, your doctorate's in mathematics." "Yes, ma'am. MIT, 2008. "Interesting." Her eyes held his for a moment longer than comfortable. "I don't recall seeing your name in any of Axiom's materials." "Recent addition," Vance said smoothly. The presentation began. Joel took the lead, walking through projected returns, market analysis, risk assessment. He was good, confident without arrogance, detailed without drowning in data. The game theory section came 20 minutes in, and Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Joel explained the model, the Nash equilibrium calculations, the strategic implications. One of Whitman's analysts, a woman in her 30s with red-framed glasses, raised her hand. "Your defection coefficient," she said. "It seems high. Have you accounted for reputation effects in repeated interactions?" Marcus saw Joel hesitate, just slightly, saw him glance toward Vance, who remained perfectly still. "We ran multiple scenarios," Joel said. "The coefficient holds across." "I'd like to see the underlying calculations," the analyst said, "because this looks like you're assuming perfect information and rational actors, which isn't realistic in volatile markets." The room shifted. Marcus felt Vance's eyes on him. "Dr. Webb," Vance said calmly, "could you address Ms. Chen's concerns?" Marcus stood slowly. Every eye in the room tracked his movement. His mouth was dry. "You're right," he said to the analyst. "The original model did assume perfect information, but we adjusted for reputation cascades and conditional cooperation strategies. The defection coefficient accounts for proportional punishment in repeated games. Agents who defect face compounding reputation, costs that limit future profitable interactions." He walked to the whiteboard, picked up a marker. His hand was steady, muscle memory from 1,000 lectures in his old life. He sketched the modification, showing how the coefficient derived from behavioral game theory rather than pure mathematics. "The key insight," Marcus continued, "is that in real markets, information asymmetry creates trust gaps. Rational actors become pseudo-rational because they're optimizing for multiple variables: profit, reputation, future opportunity. The 0.83 adjustment reflects that reality." He set down the marker and turned. The analyst was leaning forward, studying the board. After a moment, she nodded slowly. "That's, actually elegant," she said. "Most models either ignore reputation entirely or overcorrect. This finds the middle ground." "Dr. Webb's specialty?" Vance said. Whitman was watching Marcus with renewed interest. "Dr. Webb, if you don't mind my asking, where were you before Axiom?" The question Marcus had been dreading. The room was silent. "I had a previous firm," Marcus said carefully. "Meridian Capital. I left in 2020. I remember Meridian." Whitman's expression didn't change. "SEC investigation, front-running scandal, some very ugly press." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Yes, ma'am. Were you involved?" Here it was, the moment where he could lie, deflect, disappear again, or tell the truth and watch everything collapse before it even started. I created the algorithm they used, Marcus said. I didn't know what they intended to do with it. When I found out, I cooperated fully with the SEC investigation. 3 of my partners went to prison. I walked away with my freedom and nothing else. The silence was excruciating. Marcus saw Vance's jaw tighten slightly. Clearly he hadn't known the full story. Joel looked somewhere between impressed and horrified. "And since then?" Whitman asked. "I've been working maintenance, keeping my head down, taking care of my daughter." "Waste of talent," Marcus blinked. "Ma'am, I said it's a waste of talent." Whitman stood, walked to the whiteboard, studied his equations. "The Meridian situation was unfortunate, but from what I recall, you were never charged with any crime. You cooperated with authorities. You paid a price for other people's greed." She turned to Vance. "This is who you have doing your quantitative analysis?" "As of yesterday, yes. Then you're smarter than I gave you credit for." Whitman returned to her seat. "Continue the presentation. I want to see the rest of the model." The meeting lasted another hour. By the end, Whitman and her team were asking detailed technical questions that Marcus found himself answering. It felt like waking up from a 4-year coma, his brain engaging with problems that mattered, ideas that clicked into place, the pure intellectual joy of solving complex puzzles. When they finished, Whitman stood. "We'll have an answer for you by end of business today. Dr. Webb, walk with me." It wasn't a request. Marcus followed her to the elevator, acutely aware of Vance and the others watching. In the elevator, Whitman pressed the button for the lobby, then turned to him. "My father was a janitor," she said. 30 years cleaning office buildings in Detroit. Worked nights so he could watch us during the day while my mother worked. Never got to use his engineering degree because nobody would hire a black man for anything but service work in 1960s Michigan." Marcus said nothing, unsure where this was going. "He taught me 2 things, Whitman continued. "First, dignity isn't about what you do, it's about how you do it. Second, the most dangerous people in any room are the ones everyone underestimates." She smiled slightly. "You remind me of him. Smart enough to solve problems nobody else sees. Humble enough to keep your mouth shut when necessary, but not so humble that you'll let someone talk shit about people who do honest work. I didn't mean to cause problems for Mr. Vance. Richard Vance is a brilliant financier and occasionally an arrogant ass. What happened last night was good for him, and what happened in that meeting was good for this deal." The elevator doors opened. "My analyst will recommend we move forward, 400 million as discussed, but I have one condition." "What's that?" "You stay on this account. I don't trust financial models I don't understand, and I don't trust them to people who can't explain them. If you're involved, I know someone's actually checking the math." "I'm not officially—" "You are now." The doors began to close. Whitman held them open. "And Dr. Webb, stop calling yourself a janitor. You're a mathematician who had to take a detour. There's a difference." The doors closed. Marcus stood in the lobby, his reflection staring back from the polished granite walls. Carlos was watching him from the security desk, eyebrows raised. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Vance. "My office. Now." The walk back upstairs felt different. People noticed him in the elevator, really noticed him, not just registered his presence and looked away. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Vance's office occupied a corner of the 40th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. He was standing at the glass when Marcus entered, hands in his pockets. "Close the door," Vance said. Marcus did. 4 years, Vance said, not turning around. "You've been cleaning these floors for 4 years, and nobody knew we had a PhD in mathematics pushing a mop around. I didn't want anyone to know. Why not? Because every time I told people the truth, I saw them calculate whether I was worth the risk, and the answer was always no. So I stopped telling the truth." Vance turned. Whitman just called. The deal's going through. She specifically requested you stay on the account. Which means I can't just let you disappear again. He walked to his desk, pulled out a folder. So here's what's happening. As of today, you're officially a quantitative analyst at Axiom Capital. Starting salary is $320,000, plus benefits and bonus structure. You'll report to Joel, work with our analytics team, and consult on our highest value accounts. Marcus felt the world tilt. I can't. You can and you will, because if I let you walk away now, I'm an idiot. And Whitman's right. I'm smarter than she gave me credit for. Vance slid the folder across the desk. Employment contract. Read it, sign it, or don't. But if you're worried about your past, know this. I already had my lawyers look into the Meridian situation. You were cleared by the SEC. You cooperated fully. And while your professional reputation took a hit, your legal record is clean. Your partners were criminals who used your work to commit fraud. That's on them, not you. Vance's expression softened slightly. Look, I get it. You're scared. You rebuilt your life from nothing, and now I'm asking you to risk it again. But Marcus, you're 53 years old. You have a daughter. How long are you going to punish yourself for someone else's crimes? Marcus looked at the folder. Inside was a contract, a salary that would change everything, a chance to stop being invisible. I need to think about it, he said. You have until Monday. After that, the offer expires and you go back to cleaning floors. Your choice. Marcus took the folder and left. Outside Vance's office, Joel Chen was waiting. Hey, Joel said. That was intense. In the meeting, I mean. Yeah. Listen, if you take the job, I just want you to know I'm not going to be a problem. What you did in there was impressive. I'm not threatened by people who are smarter than me. That's how you learn. Marcus studied him. Joel was 31, partner track, everything Marcus had been before it all fell apart. You sure about that? No, Joel admitted, but I'm going to try to be. He smiled slightly. Besides, Vance already told me if I give you shit, he'll fire me. So there's that. Marcus found himself almost smiling back. Good to know. He left the building at noon, contract in hand, and took the subway home to Queens. His apartment was small, one bedroom barely furnished, clean but sparse. He'd learned to live on $38,000 a year. $320 would be like winning the lottery. His daughter's school picture was on the refrigerator. Maya, 15, wearing her robotics team shirt, grinning at the camera. Smart like her mother had been. Full of possibilities Marcus and Janelle had tried to build before cancer took her 2 years ago. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. Dad, Maya answered on the second ring. What's wrong? You never call during the day. Nothing's wrong. I need your opinion on something. Okay. What if I told you I might have a chance to go back to doing what I used to do, before everything fell apart? Silence on the other end. Then, the math stuff. Yeah, the math stuff. Would it make you happy? The question caught him off guard. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. Dad, you clean toilets at night and help me with calculus homework during the day, and you always look sad when you're helping me, like you're remembering something that hurts. If this job makes you look less sad, you should take it. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. When did you get so smart? I have a pretty good teacher. He could hear the smile in her voice. Take the job, Dad. Whatever happened before, it's done. You can't fix it by staying invisible forever. After they hung up, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, contract in front of him. Through the window, he could see Queens stretching toward Manhattan, a city of second chances and crushing failures, all stacked on top of each other. He thought about Vance's offer, about Whitman's story about her father, about Joel's cautious respect, about his daughter telling him to stop being sad. He thought about the last 4 years, the safety of invisibility, the weight of hiding, the slow suffocation of pretending to be less than what he was. And he thought about last night, standing in that conference room, solving a problem in 30 seconds, feeling his mind engage with something that mattered again. At 5:47 p.m., Marcus picked up a pen and signed the contract. Then he texted Vance, "I'll see you Monday morning." The response came immediately. "Good. Don't be late." Marcus set down his phone and looked at his daughter's picture on the refrigerator. He'd spent 4 years trying to protect her by disappearing. Maybe it was time to show her what rebuilding looked like instead. Outside his window, the sun was setting over Queens, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Marcus watched it for a long time, trying to remember what hope felt like. It felt like terror and possibility all at once. Monday morning arrived with the kind of cold clarity that only October in New York could deliver. Marcus stood outside Axiom Capital at 8:45 a.m., watching people stream through the revolving doors. Young analysts in their 20s, senior partners in their 50s, everyone moving with the unconscious confidence of people who belonged. He'd barely slept all weekend. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw equations and old faces, remembered conversations and depositions, the way his former partners had looked at him in court when he'd testified, the way they'd promised they'd destroy him if he talked, and the way they'd tried to keep that promise, even from prison. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "You got this, Dad. Stop overthinking." Marcus smiled despite himself and walked inside. The first week was brutal. Joel introduced him to the quantitative analysis team. 6 people, all under 40, all Ivy League graduates with resumes that read like Olympiad winners. They were polite in that particular way that meant they'd been warned to be polite, asking questions that probed just enough to establish hierarchy without being overtly hostile. "So, Dr. Webb," a woman named Sarah asked during their first team meeting, "what's your experience with high-frequency trading models?" "I built one of the first commercially successful HFT algorithms in 2009, Marcus said, "before they were widely regulated." "Oh, were you at Renaissance?" someone asked. "Citadel?" "Meridian Capital." The room went quiet. Marcus watched recognition dawn on several faces. "Wait," Sarah said slowly. "Meridian, that was the front-running scandal, right? 2020? "That's right. But you weren't charged with anything," Joel interjected quickly. The SEC cleared him completely. "Technically," another analyst, David, late 20s, MIT PhD, said, "they gave him immunity in exchange for testimony. That's not exactly the same as being cleared." Marcus felt the familiar weight settle over him. "You're right. It's not the same. I cooperated because what my partners were doing was wrong, and because I'd built the tool they used. Being technically innocent doesn't change the fact that people lost money because of my code." "How much money?" Sarah asked. $430 million, most of it from pension funds and municipal retirement accounts. The silence was absolute. Marcus could see them recalculating, deciding whether to trust him, wondering what Vance had been thinking. "The algorithm itself wasn't illegal," Marcus continued. "It was sophisticated arbitrage, identifying micro-inefficiencies in pricing and exploiting them faster than traditional traders could react. The illegal part was using it to front-run specific trades after my partners gained unauthorized access to order flow data. I designed the algorithm for legitimate arbitrage. They modified it for theft." "Did you suspect?" David asked. "Eventually, when the returns were too consistent, too perfectly timed. But by then, I'd already signed documents, already committed my name to the structure. And when I confronted them, they showed me contracts that made me legally liable for everything. So I had a choice: stay silent and become complicit, or cooperate with the SEC and lose everything." So you chose to lose everything, Joel said. I chose not to be a criminal. Sarah leaned back in her chair. That must have been terrifying. It was. Still is. Marcus looked around the table. Look, I know what you're all thinking. You're wondering if Vance made a mistake, if I'm a liability, if working with me could damage your careers. I get it. I'd be thinking the same thing. So here's what I can tell you. I'm good at what I do. Really good. And I'm here because I still believe mathematics can solve problems instead of creating them. But if you'd rather I work alone, just say so. I've gotten used to being alone. The meeting ended without resolution. Marcus spent the rest of the week working on risk models, reviewing the Whitman acquisition, and eating lunch by himself in the small kitchen on the 40th floor. On Thursday, Sarah sat down across from him. I looked into the Meridian case, she said without preamble. Read the SEC filings, the court transcripts, everything public. You know what I found? Marcus waited. You could have walked away clean. Your lawyer had negotiated a deal where you'd testify in exchange for complete immunity, no professional consequences, no public disclosure of your involvement, but you refused. You insisted on making a public statement acknowledging your role in creating the algorithm, even though it meant your name would be permanently connected to the scandal. Why does that matter? Because it means you weren't trying to save yourself. You were trying to tell the truth. Sarah studied him. Most people would have taken the easy out. You chose the hard way because you thought it was right. That's unusual. Is this leading somewhere? I'm sorry about Monday. The questions about being cleared versus immunity, that was shitty. You've paid enough. She stood up. If you need help with the Whitman models, let me know. Joel's good, but I'm better with behavioral economics stuff. After she left, Marcus sat alone in the kitchen, staring at his half-eaten sandwich. It was the first time in 4 years someone had apologized to him for anything. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later. Axiom was pitching to a healthcare consortium, 17 regional hospital systems, trying to optimize their combined purchasing power. The model was complex. Game theory, supply chain logistics, competitive bidding dynamics, all layered together. The team had been working on it for 3 months. Marcus reviewed the proposal on a Wednesday night, sitting in his small office. They'd given him one, barely bigger than a closet, but it had a window. By midnight, he'd found the flaw. The model assumed hospital systems would cooperate rationally, sharing information and coordinating bids to maximize collective leverage. But it missed the political reality. Each system was run by executives competing for board approval, local reputation, individual career advancement. They wouldn't cooperate. They'd defect to look strong to their own stakeholders, even if it meant worse outcomes for the group. Marcus spent the night rebuilding the model, incorporating reputation effects, political incentives, and the kind of human irrationality that made sense when you remembered that organizations weren't rational actors. They were collections of people with conflicting motives. He sent the revised model to Joel at 6 a.m. Joel called him at 6:47. Are you awake? Haven't been to sleep yet? Your revision. Marcus, this is brilliant. It completely changes our approach, but the presentation's today at 2. Can you walk me through it? They spent the morning translating Marcus's work into something the healthcare executives would understand. By the time the consortium arrived, they'd restructured the entire pitch around the new model. Instead of assuming cooperation, they built in mechanisms for managed competition, ways to let each system claim local victories while still achieving collective bargaining power. It worked. The executives signed a letter of intent by 4 p.m. A $750 million deal, the largest in Axiom's history. Vance called an all-hands meeting that evening. Today proved something I've always believed, he said, standing in front of the entire firm. The best ideas don't care about hierarchy. They care about truth. Dr. Webb's been here 2 weeks, and he just saved our largest pitch by catching a fundamental flaw nobody else saw." He paused. "Some of you were skeptical about bringing him on. I get it, his background's complicated. But this is why I did it, because I'd rather have someone who tells uncomfortable truths than someone who only tells me what I want to hear." After the meeting, people Marcus didn't know congratulated him, invited him to happy hour, asked his opinion on other projects. The shift was palpable, from wary tolerance to genuine respect. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Marcus felt exposed. He left the office at 7, took the subway to Queens, and found Maya doing homework at their kitchen table. "Hey, Dad, you look tired. Long day? Good day, but long. I saw your name in a Wall Street Journal notification. Something about Axiom winning a big contract." Marcus blinked. "What?" Maya held up her phone. "It's trending. Axiom Capital's secret weapon. The janitor who became a quantitative analyst." There's a whole article. Marcus felt ice in his stomach. He grabbed the phone and read, "In an era of algorithmic trading and artificial intelligence, Axiom Capital's latest competitive advantage came from an unlikely source. Marcus Webb, a 53-year-old janitor who spent 4 years cleaning the firm's offices while holding a doctorate in mathematics from MIT. Webb's story reads like financial fiction, a brilliant mathematician whose career was derailed by the 2020 Meridian Capital scandal, forced to take maintenance work to support his daughter. But when Axiom CEO Richard Vance witnessed Webb solve a complex game theory problem in seconds, a problem that had stumped the firm's entire analytics team, everything changed. The article went on, detailing the Meridian case, Webb's cooperation with the SEC, his years in self-imposed exile, and his sudden emergence as Axiom's newest quantitative analyst. It included quotes from Margaret Whitman praising Webb's intellectual honesty, and from Vance calling him the kind of contrarian thinker Wall Street needs. It also included a photo, Marcus in his maintenance uniform, side by side with a recent picture from the Healthcare Consortium presentation. "Dad!" Maya's voice was worried. "Are you okay?" Marcus set down the phone carefully. "I need to make some calls." The first was to Vance, who answered on the first ring. "I assume you saw the journal piece. Who talked to them?" "Nobody. They pieced it together from public filings and the Whitman deal announcement." "It's a good story, Marcus. Human interest. People love a redemption arc." "This isn't redemption, Richard. This is exposure. Do you know what's going to happen now? Your past is already public record. Nothing in that article changes. Everything changes." Marcus was surprised by the volume of his own voice. "I stayed invisible for 4 years because the moment people know who I am, they start asking questions. They start digging. They start wondering if maybe the SEC was wrong. If maybe I knew more than I said. If maybe I'm still the guy who cost teachers their pensions. You're not that guy. You don't know that. You knew me for 2 weeks before you gave me this job. You have no idea what I'm capable of when I'm desperate enough." Silence on the line. Then Vance said quietly, "Are you telling me you lied to the SEC? I'm telling you that I created something I knew was dangerous, and I let other people use it because I wanted to believe I was building something revolutionary. I'm telling you I saw warning signs and ignored them because the money was good and the work was exciting. I'm telling you that when it all collapsed, I gave them everything I had, but that doesn't mean I was innocent. It means I was guilty of something they couldn't quite prosecute. Marcus, I need to think." He hung up. Maya was watching him with wide eyes. "Dad, what's happening?" Marcus sat down heavily. "Remember when I told you about my old job, about what happened with Meridian? You said you made a mistake, that you helped the SEC fix it. That's the simple version." Marcus looked at his daughter, this brilliant 15-year-old who still believed her father was a good man. "The complicated version is that I knew something was wrong, and I kept working anyway. I told myself I didn't understand what they were doing, that I was just the mathematician, that I couldn't be responsible for how they used my work. But that was a lie, I told myself, so I could keep cashing paychecks. But you stopped them. After $430 million disappeared, after thousands of people lost their retirement savings, I stopped them late, Maya. And now that I'm visible again, everyone's going to remember that. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. He let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Another. By 8 p.m., he'd received 17 calls from reporters, 3 from law firms, and 1 from a producer, asking if he'd be interested in telling his story for a Netflix documentary. The doorbell rang at 8:34. Marcus opened it to find Vance standing in his hallway, still in his suit, looking uncomfortable in the fluorescent light. "How did you find my address?" "Employee records." Vance held up a bottle of bourbon. "Can I come in?" Marcus almost said no. Instead, he stepped aside. In the kitchen, Vance poured 2 glasses and sat down across from Marcus. "I'm not here as your boss. I'm here because I think I screwed up, and I need to know if I just destroyed your life by hiring you." "I don't know yet. Talk me through it. The Meridian thing, all of it. Not the public version, the real version." So Marcus did. He told Vance about creating the algorithm, about the late nights perfecting the code, about the rush of watching it work, about the first time he noticed the returns were too perfect, too consistent, about confronting his partners and being shown contracts he'd signed, documents he'd approved, evidence that made him look complicit. "They told me I had 2 choices," Marcus said. "Stay quiet and get rich, or speak up and go to prison alongside them. They had lawyers, documentation, a paper trail that made me look like the architect of the whole scheme. But you spoke up anyway." "Not right away. I spent 3 months trying to find a way out. 3 months waking up every morning, knowing I was part of something that was stealing from people who couldn't afford to lose. And every day, I stayed quiet. I became more guilty." Marcus took a drink. "When I finally went to the SEC, they offered me immunity for cooperation, complete protection, but I refused unless they put my statement on public record. Because I needed people to know I'd built the weapon, even if I hadn't pulled the trigger. Why? Because I was tired of lying, and because I thought if I told the truth, maybe I could live with what I'd done." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Turns out public confession just means everyone knows exactly what you are." Vance was quiet for a long moment. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're the most morally rigorous person I've ever met, and it's destroying you." Vance leaned forward. "Marcus, you made a mistake. You trusted the wrong people. You stayed in a bad situation longer than you should have. And when you realized what was happening, you burned down your entire life to stop it. That's not the story of a criminal. That's the story of someone who valued doing the right thing more than protecting themselves. $430 million, Richard, which your partners stole. Using your code, yes, but you didn't steal it. They did." Vance stood, walked to the window overlooking the Queen's Street below. "You want to know why I really hired you? It wasn't just because you're brilliant. It's because when you walked into that conference room, you didn't try to make me like you. You corrected my equation and then told me I was an asshole for the joke I'd made. You were the first person in 5 years to tell me something I didn't want to hear. And now? Now you're terrified that article exposed you as a fraud. But Marcus, everyone who works in finance has made mistakes. Everyone has compromised, stayed quiet when they should have spoken up, prioritized career over ethics at least once. The only difference is you paid the price for yours, and you're still paying it." He turned. "So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to come to work. You're going to ignore the reporters. You're going to do your job. And anyone who has a problem with your past can come talk to me about it. And if this damages Axiom, then it damages Axiom. I'd rather have that than lose someone who actually gives a shit about being honest. After Vance left, Marcus sat alone in his kitchen. Maya had gone to bed, but he could hear her moving around in her room, probably reading, unable to sleep because her father's complicated past was suddenly everywhere. His phone buzzed with another unknown number. This time he answered. "Dr. Webb?" A woman's voice, professional. "My name is Catherine Torres. I'm a reporter with the Financial Times. I'm doing a story on second chances in finance, and I'd love to talk to you about your experience at Meridian and your current role at Axiom." "I'm not interested." "I understand. But Dr. Webb, your story resonates with a lot of people who've made mistakes and feel like they can't recover. If you're willing to discuss what really happened, not the SEC version, but your version, it might help others who... You want to know what really happened." Marcus heard his voice rise. "I got seduced by my own intelligence. I convinced myself that I was above the consequences because the math was beautiful and the money was good. And when everything collapsed, I learned that being smart doesn't mean you're ethical. It just means you're better at rationalizing your choices. That's my story. That's what I learned. Is that redemptive enough for you?" Silence, then. "Yes, actually. Can I quote you on that?" Marcus hung up. He looked at his daughter's school picture on the refrigerator, at the small apartment he'd fought so hard to keep, at the suit jacket hanging by the door, the one that meant he had somewhere to be in the morning besides a maintenance closet. 2 weeks ago, he'd been invisible, safe, anonymous. Now he was everywhere, and everyone was watching. And the terrifying part was, he didn't want to disappear again. He wanted to stay visible, even if it meant everyone could see exactly what he was. Flawed, complicated, still figuring out how to be better than the worst thing he'd ever done. Marcus poured himself another drink and sat at the kitchen table until dawn, trying to decide if that made him brave or just a fool. The Financial Times article ran 3 days later, and it was worse than Marcus expected. In his own words, Marcus Webb on intelligence, ethics, and the cost of complicity. Catherine Torres had taken his angry confession and turned it into something else. Not a redemption story, but an unflinching examination of how smart people rationalize bad choices. The article quoted him extensively. "Being smart doesn't mean you're ethical. It just means you're better at rationalizing your choices." It also included interviews with former Meridian employees, SEC investigators, and 2 people whose pensions had been affected by the fraud. One was generous. Webb was the only one who told the truth. He lost everything to help us. The other was not. "I don't care if he cooperated. My mother lost $60,000 because of his algorithm. That's 2 years of her retirement." Marcus read it at 6 a.m. in his kitchen, his coffee growing cold, Maya still asleep in her room. His phone had been ringing constantly for 3 days. He'd stopped answering. When he arrived at Axiom at 8:15, there were cameras outside, news vans from 3 networks, photographers, reporters calling his name. He kept his head down and pushed through, security guards clearing a path. Inside, the office was quieter than usual. People watched him walk by, their expressions impossible to read. Sarah caught his eye and gave him a small nod. David looked away. Vance was waiting in Marcus's office. "Have you seen the article?" Marcus asked. "Yes. And you need to read your email." Vance pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. "You've received 83 messages in the last 2 hours. 67 are from people thanking you for your honesty. 12 are from mathematics departments asking if you'd be willing to give guest lectures on ethics in quantitative finance. 4 are from journalists requesting follow-up interviews." Marcus stared at him. "What about the death threats, the hate mail?" "There are some, 3 to be precise. My security team is handling them." Vance set down his phone. "Marcus, you thought that article would destroy you. Instead, it made you human. People don't want heroes. They want honest examples of what rebuilding looks like. I'm not an example of anything. You're wrong. Vance walked to the window. Yesterday I got a call from Margaret Whitman. She read the article and wants to triple the oversight budget on her account specifically so you can personally review every major decision. She said, and I quote, "I want someone on my deals who understands the difference between mathematically optimal and morally defensible." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not quite hope, but something adjacent to it. "There's a board meeting this afternoon," Vance continued. "Some members are concerned about the publicity. They're going to ask me to justify keeping you on, especially given the cameras outside and the attention on Axiom. I'm going to tell them you're staying because you're the best quantitative analyst we've had in 5 years. But I need to know, are you staying?" "I don't know." "Then figure it out. Because if you run now, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to stay visible." After Vance left, Marcus sat in his small office, staring at the email inbox. He clicked on one from an address he didn't recognize. M. Torres, FT, Financial Times. Dr. Webb, thank you for your honesty during our phone call. I know you hung up on me, and I know you probably hate what I wrote, but I want you to know something. I've been covering Wall Street for 12 years. I've interviewed hundreds of people who made bad choices, insider traders, fraudsters, reckless executives who crashed companies. You're the only one who didn't try to justify yourself. You just told the truth. That matters more than you think. Catherine Torres Marcus closed the email and opened his desk drawer. Inside was the contract he'd signed 3 weeks ago, the one that officially made him a quantitative analyst at Axiom Capital. Below it was his old MIT diploma, the one he'd kept in storage for 4 years. He'd brought it to the office last week without really knowing why. Now, looking at it, he understood. He'd needed proof that he used to be someone, even if that someone had made catastrophic mistakes. His phone rang. An unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail, then answered on impulse. "Dr. Webb?" A man's voice, older, tired. "My name is Robert Chen. I taught advanced game theory at MIT from 1998 to 2015. You took my graduate seminar in 2006. Marcus remembered, a brilliant professor who made impossible concepts feel intuitive, who'd written recommendation letters for Marcus's doctoral defense. Professor Chen, I remember. "I read the Financial Times article this morning. I wanted to tell you something." A pause. "You were one of the best students I ever taught. Brilliant mind, genuine curiosity, real ethical awareness, or so I thought at the time. When the Meridian scandal broke, I felt betrayed. Like I'd failed to teach you the difference between technical correctness and moral responsibility." Marcus closed his eyes. "You didn't fail. I did." "That's what I called to say. I read your words in that article. Your admission that being smart doesn't make you ethical. And I realized you learned the lesson I tried to teach, just in the hardest way possible." Chen's voice softened. "I'm sorry it took me 4 years to tell you that I'm proud of how you responded when everything collapsed. Not everyone has the courage to tell the truth when it costs them everything." After they hung up, Marcus sat very still. Through his office window, he could see Manhattan stretching into the distance, millions of people, all making choices, all trying to figure out how to live with what they'd done. The board meeting was at 2 p.m. Marcus spent the morning working on risk assessments for the Whitman account, losing himself in equations and probability matrices. Around noon, Sarah knocked on his door. "Can I come in?" "Sure." She sat down, looking nervous. "I wanted to tell you something before the board meeting. David and I talked to the rest of the team. We're all going on record supporting you staying at Axiom. If the board tries to fire you, they'll have to explain why they're overruling their entire quantitative analysis department." Marcus felt something crack in his throat. "Why?" Because you're good at this job, because you make us better at our jobs, and because David did something stupid, he called one of the people quoted in that article, the woman whose mother lost $60,000. What? Why would he? He wanted to understand. He wanted to know if she thought you should lose your job over what happened. Sarah smiled slightly. She said no. She said you'd already lost enough, and that watching you try to rebuild was more meaningful than watching you stay destroyed. She said her mother agreed. Marcus couldn't speak. So yeah, Sarah continued, you should stay. We all think so. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Marcus wasn't in the room, but Joel texted him updates. 2:47 p.m. 3 board members want you gone. Vance is fighting. 3:15 p.m. Margaret Whitman just called in remotely. She's threatening to pull her entire account if you're fired. 3:52 p.m. 2 more clients just sent letters of support. This is insane. 4:23 p.m. You're staying. The vote was 7-2 in favor. Vance looked like he wanted to murder the 2 who voted against. When Marcus left the office that evening, the reporters were still there. This time, he didn't push past them. He stopped on the steps, cameras clicking, microphones extending. Dr. Webb, how do you feel about the board's decision? Grateful, Marcus said, and terrified, and determined to prove they made the right choice. Do you regret your role in the Meridian scandal? Every day, but regret without action is just self-pity. So I'm trying to do better work, make better choices, be honest about what I don't know, instead of pretending I know everything. What would you say to people who think you don't deserve a second chance? Marcus thought about that. I'd say they're probably right. I don't deserve it. But I'm grateful for it anyway, and I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying to earn it. That night, Maya made dinner. Spaghetti. Burned on the edges, perfect. They ate together at their small kitchen table, not talking much, just existing in the same space. Dad, Maya said finally, are you going to be okay? I think so, maybe. Good, because I told my robotics team about you today. About what happened at Meridian, about you becoming a janitor, about the new job. And you know what they said? What? They said it was the most badass thing they'd ever heard. That you blew up your whole life to tell the truth, and then rebuilt from literally nothing. They think you're a hero. I'm not a hero, Maya. I know. You're better. You're real. She smiled. Heroes don't have to rebuild. They're already perfect, but you're showing me what to do when you screw up. When you make mistakes that hurt people, you face it, you fix what you can, and you keep going. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. When did you get so smart? I have a pretty good teacher. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a lecture hall at Columbia University, facing 200 graduate students in quantitative finance. The invitation had come from Professor Chen, who'd orchestrated a series of guest lectures on ethics in algorithmic trading. My name is Marcus Webb, he began. 6 months ago, I was a janitor. 4 years before that, I helped create a trading algorithm that was used to steal $430 million from pension funds. Today, I'm going to tell you how both of those things are connected and why they matter for your careers. He spoke for 90 minutes about technical brilliance and moral blindness, about the seduction of optimization, about how easy it is to convince yourself that you're solving problems when you're actually creating them. He talked about the warning signs he'd ignored, the rationalizations he'd made, the moment he'd realized he had to choose between his career and his conscience. The math doesn't care about ethics, he concluded. It just tells you what's mathematically optimal. Your job is to figure out if mathematically optimal is the same thing as morally defensible. And when it's not, When your beautiful solution would hurt people who can't afford to be hurt, you have to have the courage to walk away from the beauty and choose the harder path. During the Q&A, a student raised her hand. "Dr. Webb, do you think you've rebuilt your career?" Marcus considered the question. "I think I've built a different career. Before Meridian, I measured success by complexity. How elegant the solution was, how much money it generated, how impressed people were. Now I measure it by whether I can explain my work to the people it affects. If I can't justify a decision to someone who might lose money because of it, I don't make that decision. Is that satisfying? It's honest, which turns out to be more important than satisfied." At Axiom, Marcus's role had evolved. He still did quantitative analysis, but Vance had added something new. Every major deal now required Marcus to write a consequence assessment, a plain language explanation of who would be affected by the decision and how. It wasn't about legal compliance, it was about moral clarity. Some partners hated it. They thought it slowed down decision-making, added unnecessary complexity. Others found it illuminating, a way to see beyond the numbers to the human beings those numbers represented. The Whitman account had grown to include 4 other healthcare consortiums. Marcus's behavioral models, the ones that accounted for human irrationality, political pressures, and institutional dysfunction, had become Axiom's signature competitive advantage. Margaret Whitman recommended him to 3 other clients, all of whom specifically requested his involvement. "You're becoming famous," Joel told him one afternoon. They'd developed an easy working relationship. Joel handled client relations. Marcus handled the mathematics, both of them checking each other's blind spots. "I'm becoming visible," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. Is it getting easier? No, but I'm getting better at sitting with the discomfort." Maya graduated from robotics competition to a summer internship at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. She wanted to study aerospace engineering, specifically orbital mechanics. Marcus helped her with the calculus, finding joy in teaching her the same mathematical beauty he'd once used for less noble purposes. "Dad," she said one night while they worked through a problem set, "do you ever wish you could go back, change what happened at Meridian?" Marcus thought about it. "If I could go back, I'd walk away the first time I suspected something was wrong. But if I'd done that, I wouldn't have learned what I learned. I wouldn't have spent 4 years cleaning floors, thinking about what matters. I wouldn't have this relationship with you, where I'm honest about my mistakes instead of pretending to be perfect." Would you take the easy version, where you never screwed up in the first place? I don't know. Probably not. The easy version doesn't teach you anything. On a cold morning in March, exactly 1 year after the Financial Times article, Marcus received an email from Catherine Torres. "Dr. Webb, I'm doing a follow-up piece on second chances in finance. 1 year later, how's it going?" Marcus stared at the email for a long time. Then he wrote, "Catherine, it's going. I'm still scared most days, still wondering if I deserve the opportunities I've been given, still carrying the weight of what I did and what I failed to stop. But I'm also doing work that matters, teaching students who'll face the same choices I faced, building models that account for human complexity instead of assuming everyone's a perfectly rational actor. And I'm raising a daughter who knows her father screwed up and owned it, which feels more important than if she thought I was perfect. You asked me once what redemption looks like. I'm not sure I'm redeemed, but I'm rebuilding, and I'm learning that maybe that's the same thing." Marcus, the article ran 2 weeks later. This time there were no cameras outside Axiom, no reporters calling for comments. Just a quiet recognition that sometimes people change by accepting they can never completely undo what they've done. They can only do better going forward. On a Saturday afternoon in April, Marcus took Maya to Queen's Museum. They wandered through exhibits on city history, pausing at a display about people who'd rebuilt their lives after major setbacks. Immigrants, refugees, people who'd lost everything and started over. "You should be in this exhibit," Maya said. "I'm not special. I just did what I had to do." "That's what makes you special, Dad. You didn't wait for permission to start over. You just started." They stood together in front of a photograph of a woman who'd escaped war, learned a new language, became a doctor. The caption read, "Rebuilding is not about returning to who you were. It's about accepting who you've become." Marcus thought about the last year, the terror of being visible, the exhaustion of constant scrutiny, the unexpected grace of people who'd chosen to believe in him, despite everything. He thought about Vance's trust, Sarah's support, Joel's partnership, about Professor Chen's phone call, and Margaret Whitman's fierce advocacy. Most of all, he thought about his daughter, watching him prove that mistakes don't have to be permanent, that honesty costs everything but buys something more valuable, the ability to live with yourself. "Come on," Maya said, tugging his arm. "They have a planetarium show starting in 10 minutes. It's about orbital mechanics." Marcus followed her through the museum, this brilliant 15-year-old who'd watched her father fall and rise and fall and rise again, who'd learned that resilience isn't about never breaking, it's about breaking and choosing to rebuild anyway. Outside, the spring sun was warm on Manhattan's streets. Somewhere in the city, Richard Vance was probably working on a Saturday, building deals and fighting with his board. Somewhere Sarah and David and Joel were living their lives, making their own choices about who to become. And Marcus, Dr. Marcus Webb, mathematician, former janitor, quantitative analyst, imperfect father, complicated man, still learning how to live with what he'd done. Marcus walked into the planetarium with his daughter and watched the stars wheel overhead, feeling something that had been absent for years, not redemption, not forgiveness, but possibility. The chance to be better tomorrow than he was today. The courage to keep trying even when he failed. The humility to know he'd never be perfect. And the determination to be honest about that imperfection. It wasn't everything. But standing there in the dark, his daughter beside him, stars projected above them in patterns of mathematical beauty that could create or destroy depending on who wielded them. It was enough. It was enough.